Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba. It's the Old Warlock Podcast. Woo!
That sounded kind of like the beginning of the Muppet Show. I guess
Ba,
there's.
ba,
I
ba,
think.
ba.
I think there's some equivalencies there.
It's kind of ingrained in me that that's how you start off a show.
I wonder where you got that.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, strange how that happens. So here we are for podcast 19. I think we need to do something special for podcast 20.
I was going to say, I think we should have another giveaway of some kind.
Ooh.
Maybe another like signed photo of us.
Here's what we could do.
That's a real deep dive for you true Old Warlock fans.
That's very. Yeah. If you know what we're referring to, make a comment because, yeah, that was our. Well, that was a long time ago and a lot of water under the bridge.
Yeah, a long time ago. That was like 4 years ago.
Yeah, at least.
God.
Yeah. Yeah. Make a comment down below if you have understanding of what that references to. And what was I going to say regarding that? Somebody got in touch with us. It was their 75th subscriber.
Yes.
He sent something to us saying, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool to have a con of old TSR games?" He sent me that to me, and I that's fallen between the cracks. I got to get back to him. He said, "Hey, what do you think about getting a con together that would just deal with gangbusters and Gamma World?" And I thought that would be a heck of a cool idea, but
neat.
we wouldn't have time to be involved in it because we got so much stuff going on right now. But I need to get back to him. Eric Martin.
Yes.
He's the one.
Yes.
Well, yeah, he sent a thing saying, "What do you think?" And I meant to get right back to him, and I completely forgot it.
Was that video called the 75th
75th subscriber special.
celebration?
75th subscriber special, I think it was.
Hold on, I got to go back and find it now because that's absolutely too funny. I maintain that is the best video we have ever made.
Well, in our minds, it is.
Just because it's the 50th. It's the 50th.
That's right.
Special.
Yeah, Eric was the 75th subscriber.
Because we
think.
did something else for the 70th.
Yes.
Or no, he just commented that he was the 75th. I think
something like
and
that.
That stuck out. Yeah, that's 296 views from 3 years ago.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that was our retrospective.
Yeah,
that we did.
That was a great video.
We need to do another one of those though, because we've done some kind of crazy squirrely stuff since then. We need to just thread those together and make our 150th video anniversary special or something.
Oh my god!
Because we're real close. I think we're up to 138 or might even be 148.
I don't know. Keep entertained. Well, nobody really cares except for me. I can look this up later.
Anyway, yeah. Just so you guys know, we have some milestones going on. It's kind of like we're just having a conversation amongst ourselves between the two of us.
It's our podcast.
We've completely stepped away from the fact that there might be people wanting to hear what we have to say. So maybe we should shift our focus here just a little bit.
That's true.
I'm Jim, and this is Alexander. Here.
Hi.
Here.
How you doing?
Yeah, pointing over here. That's Alexander. We are the Old Warlock, and we are the Old Warlock Podcast. Yeah, you know what I mean.
We have never ever done an introduction like this before.
There's a first time for everything. Thank you very much.
That's true. I shouldn't.
Do we have to continue in the same rut that we've been in for the past 4 or 5 years? No, I'm branching out. I am making this a dynamic podcast now by adding in these interesting elements at the beginning and maybe in the middle and maybe at the end. It might be just a completely different show than it has been before.
Completely different experience than all of you guys
exactly
used to.
Exactly. It might end up being something that might get us up to 5,000 subscribers. I doubt it, but
absolutely. That's within grasp. We've been doing this 6 years and we've only got 2,100.
Something like. No, we've got 4,200.
4,200.
We have 4,200 subscribers. You've lost your mind. But still, you're right. 4 years. Yeah, I mean there are 10-year-olds out there that have been doing it for 5 years who have 50,000 subscribers.
We do not. Oh my God, we do have 4,200.
Yes, we do. What is wrong with you? You had a long day at work, didn't you?
God, yeah, I guess so.
Anyway,
I went went to the gym today. Here's a fun anecdote from my life. Went to the gym today, and I was doing squats. And the guy who was next to me, I'm not going to tell you how much I was squatting. The guy who was next to me on the Smith machine, he was sitting down and he was doing overhead presses with twice the amount of weight that I was squatting with. And that didn't make me feel fantastic.
No, I can imagine it didn't.
That was a humbling
I
moment.
imagine
That happened
so.
like 45 minutes ago. So I'm just kind of...
And you thought we only had 2,100 subscribers too. Your one claim to fame, and
it's
you
mine.
halved it.
Yeah, I don't deserve it. I'm weak.
Anyway, in this video, we didn't have a real strong plan for this podcast. Sorry, not video, podcast. But we've got a couple of cool things that I've wanted to kind of go back to. At least one thing I've wanted to go back to, and a couple of other things that I think you guys might find interesting. So let's kind of jump into that and stop talking about ourselves here at the, I don't know, 6-minute mark. And let's move on to something that people might actually want to hear.
What are we starting with?
Well, something that I'm going to toss out there, because how do I want to go about this? I was talking to John a while back about how we actually got started in the whole role-playing game thing. And actually, I introduced John to role-playing games. I mean, we were friends, long before then. We've been friends for several years prior to him starting with Dungeons and Dragons. But I actually had my start, I think, with Calvin more than anything else. Calvin's another friend of mine. We still play D&D on a regular basis, or we try to play it on a regular basis. And I realized that really we kind of got primed for the role-playing game thing by playing Wargames.
Wargames.
Yeah, and I've been doing a lot of reading on books that are examining the history of role-playing games. And a lot of them actually tie the development of role-playing games and the popularity of role-playing games. They actually tie those into much, much earlier war games where you would take on, in many cases, an individual persona on a battlefield. There are a lot of...
Were Napoleon.
Well, it's not so much you were Napoleon, although that was the case. I mean, if you look at some of the early role-playing games, non-Dungeons and Dragons, you did take on the persona of a general or a colonel, or maybe it was a mayor, sure, or something like that. Bronstein is really, because I see Bronstein as the actual precursor to the modern role-playing game. A lot of people say that it's Dave Arneson and Blackmore. I think that there was a prior step to that, and that was Bronstein. But and we could go into that in another podcast at some point.
Yeah,
but,
hot take. Comment down below what you think of that.
Yeah, I mean, if you want us to take a closer look at Bronstein as an early role-playing game, or the early role-playing game that kind of set the table for what was to follow, let us know. We'll do that. But there were a lot of games prior to Bronstein where you would take on an individual persona in a war game. And so it was not meant to be a role-playing game, but you kind of ended up doing that. And one of the games that really jumps to mind with me is Squad Leader. It was an Avalon Hill game that came out in I may be way off on this. It came out in 1973?
Okay.
72. I want to say it was the early 70s. I don't think it was the late 60s. I think it was the early 70s. And Squad Leader was a hexagon map war game where you had units that were either squads or you had individual leaders in the game.
Okay.
And so you had to be kind of careful with your leaders because they gave benefits to all of the other players around them. Well, for me, and this is why I bring all this up. For me, playing Squad Leader, there were certain officers that were represented by individual counters in the game. There were certain officers that I started to identify with. There was a German lieutenant in the battle for Stalingrad, and if he had to lead his men in, this, anybody who didn't play Squad Leader, and you never did play Squad Leader with me, you should have. You still should. It is a really fun game. You're laughing. You're laughing. I'm telling you, you would enjoy this game immensely.
No. I would love it. I know where it sits on your
I know.
shelf.
I know you know. Yeah. It's just that
From
we
the
never.
viewer's perspective, back to the right.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that we never had the chance to sit down and do it because it was a bit complicated for you when you were really young.
Yeah.
And then it was D&D for the most part after you got old enough to start understanding the concepts of role-playing games.
That was all I wanted to do.
Exactly. But Squad Leader, oh my gosh, it was a great game. It is a great game. You can't buy it anymore. You have to get it online. But Squad Leader, you had individual, like I said, you had individual officers. It was squad based, hence the name. It was squad based combat, and the maps were usually like the one that's the scenario that I played probably most often was called Tractor Works, and it was supposed to be a recreation of the battle for a factory in Stalingrad. But the thing is, you had to, you equipped men individually. So you had individuals who carried like machine guns. You had guys who could throw smoke grenades. You had guys who carried flamethrowers. There were all kinds of interesting things that you had to do, and so it was a game set up to where you've got to lay down a smoke screen to run across the street, because if your opponent has set up his machine gun in the right place on the second floor of building X, he can mow down your men as they run across the street, or has a good chance. You could move through the sewers to get into other buildings. You could actually have fights from fight from one level of building to a second level of building to a third level of a building. So you're battling up and down three-dimensionally in these buildings. But all of those things with my brain, which is always kind of wanting to live in an alternate reality anyway, for me, coming to identify with specific soldier counters on those RPG board maps, that to me was the precursor for role-playing games.
Sure.
Because not in such as not in that I had to give the character or the counter on the map a personality, but I had to carry out his actions as an individual and make sure that he did the best that he could do to support those around him. And I think that still actually happens in my role-playing game play. I've been playing Enclave with Robbie online. I find myself stepping into the role of Lieutenant Staler, and making sure that everybody has got the right stuff, that they have all the equipment that they need. I'm automatically jumping into the slightly lower commissioned officer role of the squad leader game, but I'm doing it in an RPG. And so that to me was where I really got started with the idea of role playing, taking on the identity of something in a game and kind of making it almost, part of who you were during the course of that game. At the same time, those early role-playing games were very important in terms of the development of the dice side of things and getting to understand the tables. I mean, a lot of people complain about the tables that were present in really early basic D&D and also advanced Dungeons and Dragons. To those of us who were playing war games in the 70s, those things were a piece of cake. In fact, they're almost expected. You just took one look at it and said, oh yeah, this is how this works. I can't tell you how many comments I've read by people saying, well, those early tables were just too difficult. And I'm always thinking, really? Because they're really not at all.
They're not complicated.
But to me, I have to, step back away at the same time and think to myself, well, wait a minute. I was raised on playing games that have those kinds of charts and tables that you had to use to play your games. So it was second nature to do that in Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of people just didn't have that. But anyway, I got to thinking about early war games that we used to play. And Squad Leader was one of them. That was one of the most popular. There was also Panzer Leader, which I didn't enjoy quite so much.
Panzer Leader became like a PC game, didn't it?
That was Panzer General. And
okay.
But I mean, it was the same basic thing. It was essentially the same type of game.
Yeah.
But again, it was a really, really fun game. Not as good as Squad Leader, but very good. But I think the game that carried me forward even more into the role-playing side of things prior to actually doing a role-playing game was Starship Troopers.
Oh, well, obviously.
And you've seen Starship Troopers and the game Starship Troopers, and that to me was even more so because you moved each counter that you moved on the board on the table, or the table, the map on the table. Mm-hmm. Each counter represented an individual person, and so they were equipped individually, and as you moved them around, pretty soon you kind of got to the point where you didn't want Rico to die, so you would send in Smith instead. But as you did it, and again, if you had an overactive imagination, you would see through the mind's eye of these counters on this map what they were experiencing as they went down into the tunnels to fight the bugs or whatever else. But again, it was another early war game that primed me to play a full-blown role-playing game. These were not, but they kind of headed that direction. They got me ready to go in that direction. But I was just thinking about that.
No, I think it's interesting because I think that you could take that claim, and I think that you could push it one step further back to the point where, I remember playing Clue, and not even actually playing Clue like the way that the game is supposed to be played, but like when I was a little kid, getting out the Clue board and all the pieces and reading like about Professor Plum, and he's one of the characters. I was like, that's who I want to be. Right. And so anytime that like playing Clue, whether or not actually following the rules or just screwing around with the board game, like putting myself into those shoes. And as a kid, I think that's a very natural thing to do.
I agree.
Even when you're like playing Life and you have your little dude and you put him in the car, your little girl, and you put her in the car, and you're driving around and you'd get married and you have your kids and whatever else. I think it's easy to, in a very limited way, insert yourself into that. You're that person.
Well, I think you're exactly right, and and that's not to say even just going out and playing in the backyard. There's tons of role playing going on in that. Mm-hmm. All I was trying to do is get it attached to board games. Some sort of game like that. And I agree with you. I think that with the game of life you can do that. I used to play a game called Stock Market when I was really young.
We've played that.
That's right. We did play Stock Market a few times. And just so you guys know, I've got every board game that I have ever owned, plus many more. But not that I stole them. It's just that I've purchased them since I stopped playing board games. Anyway, I've got a whole bunch of board games. Let's leave it at that. But even with
quite a few of them actually over there.
Yeah, you probably can. But even with Stock Market, next thing you know, I'm a stockbroker. I'm not just a mindless automaton who's trying to gather up tickets. I am a stockbroker in this game. And that's what makes a game good, is when you can identify with whatever the situation is and you can place yourself into that situation. But to bring it all the way back, to me, it was games like Squad Leader and Starship Troopers. Those were the games that really got you kind of the sweaty palm, oh my goodness, my favorite officer is about to die type thing, which is, that carries straight over into role-playing games.
Oh yeah. It's just, I think it's funny to look at it from that perspective because like I have friends who have never played role-playing games before. And when I say like, I play D&D, it's something that I like to do. They're like, well, I've never really understood how it works. And then I find myself in this weird situation where I'm trying to explain something that I oftentimes have a lot of difficulty explaining to somebody who has has
no understanding of it. Yeah. Right.
It's kind of hard to just say, okay, I become this person and I'm put into a situation and the person running the game tells me like a room is this big and then I have to make a decision on what to do in that room. They're like, okay, but it doesn't really click.
Right.
But I think that you're right in that this is something in a less structured way. Playing role-playing games is like something that everybody has done over the course of their life, especially when they were a kid growing up. It's just in a more codified, this is what you can and cannot do kind of way.
Yeah,
I've
exactly.
never thought about that. So that's an interesting way to frame it.
Well, at the same time, though, you mentioned that, and I can't think of any child I grew up with, anybody who was a child that I grew up with, who didn't engage in role-playing out on the playground.
We all did.
Exactly.
We got in trouble for it all the time.
Right. But here's my question. At what point do people who do not understand role-playing games, at what point did they stop doing that? And that's a completely alien concept to me, because I've never stepped away from it. I mean, from the very, very earliest, you haven't either, I know. From the very, very earliest days, it has been an inherent part of who I am. But at some point, and I know a lot of people like this, at some point, they stepped away from that I want to pretend to be somebody else for a while idea, and they never went back to it.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to being sure that you maintain an active imagination with whatever you do. And I think that that's something anybody can do. I don't think
I
it's
think so too.
circumstantial, or I think it's just there has to be a conscious effort in maintaining that, because I think it's like a muscle. If you don't exercise it, it's
good point.
going to be strong.
That's a good way to put it.
Even if it is just playing Clue or some, very basic Hasbro, no offense to Hasbro, kind of board game, I think if you are removed from that and all of your entertainment comes from something that's manufactured for you, it makes it more difficult to put yourself back in that situation.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not to say, though, that people who haven't done it in a long time can't pick it back up and get back into it. Because, I mean, there are a lot of people that, like, there are people that I work with and that I've known for a while who never played things like D&D, but now they are like, yeah, we're getting back into it. I know people who are inviting me to go and play these games, and so now I'm starting to kind of figure out how it works and get more comfortable with it. So it's a process.
Well, and I think that I understand what you're saying, because we've had a lot of comments on the YouTube channel saying the same thing. I haven't played since 1987, and now I'm getting back into it.
Yeah.
So, which is always, it's always a fun thing to hear. But again, there's just this, for people who look at you with that blank look.
What is it?
Yeah. Now, I've heard of it, but could you explain it to me?
And it's not judgmental.
No,
it's
not.
It's genuine lack of understanding.
I simply don't understand it. Because I have no frame of reference. And I'm not saying that they're bad people or that they're not, not even that they're not imaginative. It's just that I have a hard time relating to their psychological situation when they don't understand how you play a role-playing game. Because it's like, I know you played this when you were 7, or you played a role-playing game when you were 7, not D&D or anything like that, but you did the role-playing thing when you were 8, 7, 6 years old. Why did you stop?
Yeah, what happened?
Does society beat that out of certain people, or
I don't know.
I don't know. It's an interesting question.
I don't know.
If you know the answer, give us a comment.
Yeah, but it is something interesting to think about, and I think it just comes down to not only with things like role-playing games, but just having some sort of a creative outlet.
Yeah,
is a very important thing that I think everybody should have, because it just adds a sort of dynamicism to people's lives that I don't think you have otherwise. And it expands the way that your mind works and the way you think about stuff. And I just think whether it's reading or writing or drawing or whatever it might be, it's important. So figure out something you like. But I think that I'm preaching to the choir with this.
Yeah, exactly. I think all the people
if
listening
you're
to this
here,
podcast,
you probably like reading fantasy books
exactly.
and playing D&D.
Yeah.
So
okay. But it's just it's preying on my mind, Paul.
Preying on my mind, Paul. Ooh, there we go. Okay. There's our Andy Griffith Show quote of the episode. If you know who says that, or in what episode.
Okay, yeah, one point for who says that, 5 points for which episode. Comment down below.
I don't think I know which episode. Hold on. Give me 5 seconds. I know which one it is. Okay.
I know which one it is too.
We're good.
But you know me. One last thing though, one last note. I'm trying to track down a copy of a game. I want to say it was called Invasion USA. And it was
that's a very Cold War.
It was so Cold War.
Board game.
It was exactly what it sounds like it was. The map was like 42 by 36. Calvin had it. We played it several times, quite a few times. And
does he not have it still?
I'm sure he does, but I want to get a copy for myself because I just really want it. But it was Canada and the United States. Canada and the United States, and the United States had annexed Central America and Mexico at some point in history. And it was the United States and Canada essentially against the the Pan Asian League that was attacking the West Coast. The European Socialist Coalition, I believe it was, that was attacking out of Cuba.
There's some propaganda for you.
Oh yeah, and then what was the other group? There was the Pan Asian League. Oh, it was the South American Union that were coming up from Venezuela and Colombia.
And like a fun game.
Oh, it really was. It was such a fun game, and it doesn't have hugely high ratings, but I absolutely loved it because one of the things about it, and again, this goes on this role playing thing again. I would start to identify with certain units.
Oh yeah.
And the thing I loved about it is that all of your units were untried until they actually got into combat. So you knew that your tank unit had a nominal strength of whatever, but all the counters, when you put them down on the board, you placed them with a question mark up. So you didn't know how strong they were, and your opponent didn't know how strong they were until they got up next to them and engaged in combat. And
I like that.
I mean, I still can remember certain games where I had understrength combat units holding mountain passes in the Rocky Mountains to try and keep the Pan Asian League from breaking into the high plains. You know, I mean, it was, but again, it was, the ability once again to put yourself into the situation. And this is not on an individual level. This is like on a unit level, but it's the same concept. Anyway,
that is too funny.
I got to find a copy.
It's worth mentioning. I looked it up while we were talking about it. Renegade Game Studios announced 2 years ago that they were in the early stages of working on reprinting Squad Leader.
Really?
Yeah, that they were republishing Squad Leader. I think they may have. They were working on getting. They're in negotiations to get the licensing from Avalon Hill, or the remnants of Avalon.
Yeah, because Avalon Hill just went downhill. No pun intended, but.
That was acquired by somebody?
Yeah,
right?
I think it was acquired, and then it was acquired again. I don't know the exact history of it, but they really dumbed down a lot of their games. And I mean, those Avalon Hill games, they were mental exercises, but man, they were fun. They were, I remember playing those on archaeological sites. We would play those for 7 hours a night, get up bleary-eyed the next morning to go out and work on the excavation. But boy, we had one heck of a war game the night before.
There's some gym lore for you, some background.
There we go.
Slowly peeling back the onion more and more.
Yeah, there's not much there.
Oh yeah, all right.
Other things. Moving on. Other things.
I think that was a pretty darn good little segment we had there. If I do say so myself. Pat. Good job, Alexander.
Okay.
I didn't talk the majority of the time.
Well, I thought that I would do this. It has been 2 years, unless you've got something you want to go into.
No.
It has been 2 years since we did our Arduin Grimoire video. And
the greatest D&D book you've never heard of.
No. That's the Holmes Basic.
The Holmes Basic. You're right.
But this is a close second in my mind. But for those of you who don't know, if you haven't watched the video, go back. It's one of our early ones. It's out of focus, and it's not our finest work, but the content is really good.
Immaculate.
And the reason Alexander rolls his eyes about it is because it was when I first started to talk about the critical hit and the fumble table that I was given in 1980, I think it was, by my friend Brian, who taught me how to play Dungeons and Dragons. The critical hit table and the fumble table came straight out of the Arduin Grimoire. And if you don't know anything about the Arduin Grimoire, it was written by a man named David Hargrave back in, I think it was published in 1977. David Hargrave was a combat photographer. When he got back from Vietnam, he started playing Dungeons and Dragons and he didn't think that it went far enough. And so he put in more violent realism, essentially, with, you stood a chance of, if you got a critical hit, you'd get your throat ripped out. There's all kinds of stuff, but it was good stuff. It wasn't random.
I wonder where he got the experience to...
I was thinking about it though, and in all honesty, being totally serious, I have to wonder he was a combat photographer in Vietnam. I have to wonder if what he saw there did influence exactly what he ended up putting into his game. And I'm not mocking him by any means. I'm just saying
no, not at
that's
all.
the case. But that's for another thing. We may end up revisiting the Arduin Grimoire with an in-focus camera at some point. But I love reading the Arduin Grimoire because when I was playing the game really early on, this would have been, we're probably looking at 1980, 1981, the Arduin Grimoire gave us no end of information, no end of really cool ideas, and it all came from the constantly churning mind of David Hargrave. I have copies of all of the Arduin Grimoire series, but in this particular case, I thought, I was just reading through it because that's what I do when I'm bored. It's like, oh, I better go reread the Arduin Grimoire. I came across a section on magic, and I thought that I would read us some of the magic references, or the way magic should be played in the Arduin campaign. And this is, I think it's fun. Let me start.
Before we get into it, the reason I say it's a touchy subject because somebody, Jim, has been recently deciding, again, Jim, to rework magic in his campaign and how it works, much to the
dismay.
Chagrin.
No, dismay. Not chagrin. Dismay.
But to the dismay of some of the people that we play with. I don't like to play characters that use magic, so not myself included, but other people, yeah.
Well, but you have a lot of magical items.
Well, that is, yeah. I'm trying not to think about that. It's
you just change the subject every time I bring that up. But let's see if any of this meshes with what I've been thinking. Maybe I'm just channeling David Hargrave, which would not be a bad thing in my mind.
No.
So this is from a section in the Arduin Grimoire, Volume 1, came out in 1977. And it talks about magic in Arduin. Arduin was David Hargrave's campaign. If the mage is disturbed while saying the spell or reading the scroll, his concentration will be broken, with the result that the spell could fail entirely, partially fire, or even boomerang back upon the user. It's good stuff. Naturally, this is not exactly what the mage had in mind, so discretion is indicated for all of the situations in which the mage could be bothered. In other words, leave your mage alone and protect him from being disturbed while he's trying to cast spells.
Makes good sense.
I love this next part. Magic is indiscriminate and will destroy friend and foe alike, so a mage should exercise great caution in combat situations. For in a melee, it is all too easy to hit friends as well as enemies.
That makes sense.
Therefore, as a general rule, magic should not be allowed in close combat situations without heavy percentages of chance that even friends will be hit by by the use of the magic spell. Which, that makes perfect sense to me.
As long as that's a possibility within the spell, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like if you're casting a fireball when you're in an enclosed room, sure.
But in my mind, even if you're disturbed by firing off a magic missile, I think there should be a chance of there being a problem.
Yeah, if you get if some hits you in the head while you're trying to get the words out, then absolutely.
Yeah. But that's something that, it's going to happen more, put it that way. Was that out loud? Dang it. So, and here's another thing. If a mage has tried a fireball against an orc, and this is new, to me anyway. If a mage has tried a fireball against an orc and the orc made his saving throw and took only half damage, that means that as far as that particular type of spell is concerned, it does not work well against that particular orc. And from that time forward, his saving roll is automatically made against that mage's fireballs. Which is interesting to me. It's an interesting concept in that there's something about the physical makeup, possibly, of that orc that precludes him from taking full damage from fireballs.
I don't know if I agree with that one.
Well, yeah, and that's fine. But let me continue here. It is simply that the mage's fireball magic is not quite the right brand of magic to cook our orc with. This holds true for all magic, and a situation where the spell either affects you or leaves you alone. If the saving roll is made, then thereafter that spell will not affect that same target until the mage goes up in level, and then when he uses that spell again, that spell will have additional power. I think it's an interesting idea.
It's an interesting idea because I see what he's going for, but I think that in my mind, just like how armor class isn't universally representative of the armor that you have on, or
right, it could be your skin, it could be
representative, yeah, of your the overall health level. I think that saving throws are more representative of like circumstantial things.
Okay,
that might
I see what
get in
you're
the way
saying.
of what's going on. So if the room fills with gas, you have the right kind of shirt on that you can cover your, and it'll prevent something from happening. But I see where he's going.
But what if that gas filling that room, maybe you have a genetic predisposition to not breathe deeply, and so you're not getting a full amount of the gas into your system.
I think
and so that gas will not affect you.
I think you could make the argument for some things.
You really don't want this to work, do you?
No. But with things like fireballs, that one doesn't. I don't think that one.
Okay. All right. Well,
if it's cookable, it's cookable.
All right. Let me move on. Let's see here. What was this? Okay. Remember also that to use a wand or a staff, the user must concentrate in order to do so. For if just thinking about firing that wand or whatever casually was enough to fire it, then there would be a lot of accidental firings. And that makes perfect sense. I mean, if all you have to do is pick it up and, swing it like it's got, swing your magic wand like it's got a trigger, and you've got that thing hanging at your belt and you bump into somebody on the street, what's to stop that thing from firing off? You've got to be concentrating on the use of the magic in the wand in order for it to function.
I think a Harry Potter approach is good. You have to put in effort. You have to say the right stuff, move the wand in the right way. You're good.
He continues with, and I, for one, do not think that mages would build magic wands that would go off in their faces. So a little concentration is needed as well as physical contact to fire those things.
Sure. I like that one.
And he kind of continues on with the same thought process. Remember also that rings must be rotated to activate for the same reasons, and that amulets and the like must be fingered or cupped in the palm. And here's the reason why. And I think this is very appropriate. All of which actions are usually very visible to a watching opponent. So, if you're just standing there and you have a ring on and you just let off a fireball from the ring, nobody's going to know. But if you have to actually manipulate it and you have to prepare that ring to use that fireball, I think that people are going to notice.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think it works I think things that you are, how do I phrase this? I think things that, like, the powers that it gives you that are inherent, you wouldn't need to. Like, if it's a like ring of protection and it changes.
Right. Yes. Class. Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I agree with that. But if it's an action ring, if it's a ring that allows you an action, I think that's going to be different. And he goes on with that. He says, and if a warrior is wearing his magic ring of flight under his armored gauntlets, when he sails off the battlements, then he'd either better grow wings or hope he lands on a nice soft pile of hay, because that ring is unturnable or unusable under all that metal. And just try grabbing an amulet under a breastplate or a gambeson.
That is evil. I agree.
But it's good. It is very good.
But it is evil because that is going to result in so many I throw my rope over the battlements moments.
And that's what I'm gunning for.
Mm-hmm. Did you tie the rope to anything? Yeah. You didn't say that.
But you see, but I actually do fully agree with this, because again,
I do too.
And this is part of the reason that my campaign is changing as far as magic is concerned, because
to evil and darkness.
Well, in your mind, in my mind, it's all sweetness and light. But that amulet of protection that you have should be a highly sought after item. And if people even see it, they should be thinking to themselves, if a character has that on and a non-player character sees it, that non-player character should be thinking to themselves, oh, wait a minute. That thing's really powerful. It's worth a lot of money. So what are you going to be needing to do as a player character? You're going to be having that underneath your robe. You're going to be having that under your gambeson. And it's going to be more of an effort for you to pull it out and actually use it. So you're going to have to think and plan ahead as to how you're going to go about doing that kind of thing, as opposed to just, well, I'm wearing an amulet of protection, therefore I'm protected. No, I'm not.
I mean, I agree, but I think that it should be reversed. I don't think that should be the impetus for it, of having other people recognize.
Well, I'm not saying that's the only reason.
Yeah. I think it's an important reason for moving forward in the story,
right,
for playing through what you're doing. But I think that I agree most with, if you don't have to have something that like activates it and makes stuff happen, then things should be happening all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Or even if, and this is kind of the way that I'm leaning with a lot of for those of you who listened to our last podcast about magic becoming dangerous in my campaign to have, at least newer magic is becoming dangerous to have in my campaign. You know, I like the idea of magic that was constructed, a magic ring, a magic sword, a magic wand, whatever it might happen to be. If that was poorly constructed by a mage at some point in the past, and somebody casts a lightning storm nearby or a fireball, is the magic that is released from that lightning storm or from that fireball, is that going to cause the poorly made magic item that you happen to be carrying, is that going to make it go off? Yeah. I see that as being I see that as being an easily occurrable action.
Yeah. No, I would agree. There's a Midwest speech for you. No, yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Uh-huh.
No, nope, yeah, yep. Well, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Weird, because we're from Vermont.
Yeah, I know. Well, we were from Delaware last week.
That's what I meant, Delaware.
Yeah, okay. So then I'll go on with this one last thing, and then I've got two more things to bring out of the Arduin Grimoire. The upshot of all this is simple. You have to have your magical goodies where your hot little hands can get them at in an instant's notice. And if you want to really jazz up your game, just add in a fumble factor. What is a fumble factor, you ask? Simply put, it is a % for mages or whomever to grab the wrong end of a wand or to read off the wrong spell on his scroll in their haste to slay the onrushing purple ugly that is going to eat him. And I think that is perfectly legitimate.
I think it is too.
Unless you tell me ahead of time.
Slim though.
But I think you can mitigate that by telling the dungeon master or the game master, this is what I'm doing to prepare for combat, and come up with an interesting idea so that you don't grab the wrong end of the wand of fireballs.
Sure.
Or to make sure that you only grab the scroll that you know you need to use. You need to just work with your game master to make sure that that's in place ahead of time. If you don't, I'm rolling the dice, and we're going to see how it shakes out.
I think this is a good moment to provide commentary on how intriguing his worlds and campaigns are, to make up for the fact that we have to put up with his evil on a nightly basis. So it's a compliment to you.
But at the same time, you're saying it's terrible, but it's okay. That's what you're saying.
But it's okay. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, it might seem that it's just death and destruction every step you take. It's not.
It's not death and destruction.
But it can be very deadly if you don't do the right thing. If you don't prepare ahead of time, that's when it's going to kill you.
Paying attention.
Yeah.
That's what'll get you.
Thank you for mitigating what could have been people believing that I just run a campaign where I want to kill everybody.
Sure thing. Yeah, that's what I'm here for.
I've only had a few total party kills in my life. Oh, okay. No, there's been more than a few.
I don't believe that.
We will move on.
Yeah. Let's ask Bill about that one and see what he has to say.
Yeah, exactly. I usually go with what's called a PPK, just a partial party kill, not a TPK, a partial party kill. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are two other things I want to jump into with this, and this is going to take just a second. And these were two of my favorite creatures from the Arduin Grimoire. And I have had both of these in my campaign. I generally don't go for silly in my campaign. These are borderline silly, but at the same time, they're a lot of fun. The first one is the thermite. And I'm not going to read all that it can do, although they are extremely dangerous. What it is a glowing reddish yellow, red hot giant warrior termite. So it's not a termite, it's a thermite. Their mere touch does 1 to 8 points of heat damage. They are 100% lightning and fireproof. Cold does double damage. But I love the idea of, oh no, our house is infected with thermites. I think it's one of my favorite.
That is fun. I like that.
Like just non-magical creatures.
Yeah.
The other one, of course, are thunder bunnies. And I have only
Did we mention the thunder bunnies in
we
the video?
did the last time.
Did.
We did in the video, but I wanted to bring them out again because to me they are the quintessential amusing monster.
The Monty Python.
In a way, they are. The Thunder Bunnies, I'm going to read a fair bit of this. They are armor class 6, speed 28 inches, so they're quick. Dexterity 14 to 18, numbers 100 to 100,000. Attacks 2 kicks for 1 point each, 1 bite for 1 to 3, which is diseased. 1 to 3 turns after the bite, the victim gets dizzy, has blurred vision. They look like crazy foam-mouthed jackrabbits. Notes: they travel in vast herds. Their sound is like distant thunder. They roar in combat and are 100% fear and confusion proof. They are like land piranhas. I love those. I think that they are borderline silly. But what I have done is, in much the same way as locusts appear every X number of years, I will have thunder bunnies appear once every X number of years in certain sections of my campaign.
If I ever have a character killed by thunder bunnies, I am going to lose my mind.
I've only had one total party kill that came about because of thunder bunnies.
Oh my! You actually had people killed. Yeah. When did that happen?
That was a long, long time ago. I haven't had
furious.
I don't think it was John that was killed. I can't remember who it was, but I have not had thunder bunnies in the campaign probably for 30 years, but they're there.
They're there.
They're there.
You're just waiting for their opportunity.
If you go to the Steplands of Bandoa, you can come across thunder bunnies.
That's a different continent, right? I've never been.
No, it's actually on the far north of the continent you spend most of your time in, the Steplands of Bandoa. Yeah, you need to go there sometime.
I don't think so. I think it's a bad idea.
It's not. You won't just automatically run into thunder bunnies. I give plenty of warning.
No, I will.
I tell people all about it, and the local cultures know all about it, and they prepare accordingly. And they'll tell you if they like it.
How do they prepare for the thunder bunnies?
They know when they're going to come about. And the thunder bunnies, they have certain things that they can do to get out of the thunder bunnies' way. Because the thunder bunnies eventually die en masse. And then it takes them a long time to regain their strength. Their thunder bunny strength.
The thunder bunny strength. I do like the thunder bunnies.
Oh, I just think they're really funny.
I think they're great.
I think they're a great.
But you're right. They're on that line where it's not quite ridiculous, but it's almost there.
It's almost like tribbles.
But better than tribbles.
Tribbles
are an abomination.
Tribbles are an annoyance, but at the same time, you can see them being an actual creature, but that annoyance factor just makes them, annoying, and so you don't want to have them in your Star Trek show. But anyway,
I should watch that episode. It's been a long time
since I've seen that. Yeah, I haven't watched it for a long time. We are at 48 minutes.
We should probably call it.
Did we? I've got nothing else that I'm. Oh, you know what? Well, we were going to talk about Expedition to the Forest of Moon, but I don't think we have enough time to actually do that. We're going to have to save that for our next
fit that into the next
podcast.
One. Maybe that's the focus of the next podcast. We talk about that.
Let's do that. For those of you who don't know, we have another Kickstarter that will be starting later on in 2024. It is called Expedition to the Forest of Moon, and it will be a set of cards with artwork that was done in-house by my youngest son Zachary. And it takes place in a portion of my campaign known as the Forest of Moon, where the moon holds an extra sway over what happens there, and it has a lot of unique creatures. That's kind of the focus of the supplement. 20 new monsters to put into your campaign that are affected by the moon. And they're pretty unique and they're pretty cool. Alexander and I have some of them are old creatures that have been in my campaign a long time. The Forest of Moon has been in my campaign for a long time. But Alexander and I have worked up a bunch of new creatures that can also be found in the Forest of Moon, and we think you're going to like it. If you're interested, go to Kickstarter. Well, there'll be a link in the description of this podcast / video, and you can go to the Kickstarter page to see actually an example of the cards, and there's also going to be a dungeon in it too, the Tomb of the Raven. And if you would please go there and click on the link in the description, go to the Kickstarter page and follow it, because if you follow it, then more people will find it, and the more people who find it and follow it, the bigger it will get. And so if you could do that for us, we would be greatly appreciative.
Yes, the actual campaign part of it is not started yet, and it probably won't for a few months yet.
Right.
But we just want to start getting the word out there. It exists. We're very excited about it. Not to say that the Deck of Contradiction wasn't cool. It was very cool.
Yeah,
Thank you to everybody who bought it.
Oh, yeah.
We think this is significantly cooler than that. We're very excited about this.
I think that the reason I like this one more, I think that the Deck of Contradiction was creative in a different way. The thing that I really like about this one is that it is the artwork. The artwork is really, it's top-notch stuff. So
it's pretty darn good.
So yeah, if you could take a look at that would be appreciated. And in the next podcast, we will actually talk about the evolution of the Forest of Moon in my campaign, what it represents, why it's there, the previous civilizations that existed in the forest at one point in time or at various points in time, and give you a little more insight into the location that we're developing for our Kickstarter.
We think you guys will like it.
Yes.
But yes, check for the links for that. You know the rest of the deal. Patreon.
Thank you.
You guys are the best. Please, if you're interested, go check it out. You'll get some exclusive stuff over there. You'll
videos,
be able to talk to us more directly.
Yeah.
Things like that. That's
newsletter. If you're interested in more content that stuff that's like what we make, which is kind of quirky and eclectic and not really terribly focused. But if you like it, then sign up for our newsletter. Just go to the link in the description and say, yes, sign me up for your newsletter. We haven't got one completed yet. It's almost there. Probably be done the next few days. It will probably be out before this podcast is released.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So take a look at that and sign up for our newsletter if you're interested. But aside from that, we are at exactly 52 minutes. And I think it's time to say goodbye.
In that case, I'm Alex.
I'm Jim, and he's
Alex.
Keep your sword on free. See how I did that?
Bye-bye. I see what you did there.
Yeah, okay. Bye-bye. Thanks, guys.